Good afternoon, everybody, and thanks for joining us 33 minutes late on this rainy Sunday afternoon. We appreciate you tuning in to what will be a truncated version of the Atheist Experience today. I'm your host, Martin Wagner. My co-host is Mr. David Clark, as always, and our guest today on the show is Mr. Paul Wilson. This show is sponsored by Atheist Community of Austin, a nonprofit educational organization promoting positive atheism and the separation of church and state. We are live today, April the 7th, 2002. ACA holds weekly meetings every Sunday morning at the Hot Jumbo Bagel Shop, 307 West 5th Street, at the corner, between Guadalupe and La Vaca, except for the first Sunday of every month when we have our lecture series at Fur's Cafeteria at North Cross Mall. Now, today being the first Sunday of the month, we had a lecture today. I didn't make it, but I'm quite sure that it was brilliant. Our guest speaker today was John Garlock? Dave Garlock, who is a UT journalism professor, talking about
Pulitzer Prize-winning
feature stories. Right. And what sort of thing did he focus on?
I have no idea.
Come on. Did you guys go? Did anyone go? Did we go?
It's hard to pick out one thing, but he talked about
maybe like the history of
writing style and how the markets for different kinds of writing have changed, and things like that. But
did he talk about?
I'm not probably the proper spokesperson for this, but it was a great lecture.
Yeah. Did he talk about like current what's going on in the world and possible news biases one way or the other?
I'm not sure. I wasn't there.
Well, then why am I asking you?
I don't know.
Okay. Well, anyway, our panel of experts swears it was a brilliant. I'm sure it was. And thanks to our very own Mary McManamy for setting that up. Mary's 2 for 2 now in the lecture series. Department, so we're going to put her in charge of that permanently, I think. Anyway, so next week we'll be back at the Bagel Shop, and those are our Sunday morning meetings. We also have a Thursday evening get-together happy hour around 7:30 p.m. or so at Antonio's Tex-Mex near the intersection of Highway 183 and Guadalupe. Not Guadalupe, I'm all confused now. Highway 183 and I-35. That's what I mean. And that's Thursday evenings about 7:30. That's a nice, very convenient evening get-together for people who can't make the Sunday morning meetings like myself. Monday evening, we have our Godless Gamers get-togethers at it's about 7 o'clock p.m. as well. That's at the home of Jeff D. and Amanda, and so if you want more information on that, that's just a fun recreational evening where all sorts of gaming and eating junk food and cutting up takes place, and so contact Jeff or Amanda if you want directions there. Anyway, okay, let's see. For more information on ACA, you can visit our fine website at atheist-community.org or call our voicemail at 371-2911. The Nonprofits is another show that we do. It's a live internet radio show every Saturday afternoon at about 2 p.m. at the atheistnetwork.com website. That's hosted by Jeff D. It features Mary McManamy, Vic Farrow, and whoever else turns up at Russell Glasser's house that afternoon, I guess, to be on the live radio show. And that's a ton of fun. There's a chat room. You can interact. That's at the atheistnetwork.com website, 2 in the afternoons every Saturday. And your browser will need the Real Player plugin in order to hear the audio stream. So, okay. We're back. This is the Atheist Experience. Ordinarily, as our regular viewers know, this is a 90-minute show. However, we're all in a big snit today because the first half hour of our program was preempted by this Mormon gathering.
Conference?
So, we'll teach them to cut into the Atheist Experience. We've got stuff to talk about the Mormons today. And so we're going to...
So if you're Mormons out there still watching, stay tuned.
Yeah, so it is not wise, Grasshopper, to interfere with the Atheist Experience. So ordinarily we come out at...
We're so powerful compared to the Mormon Church.
That's very true, yeah. There's 90 bajillion of them and 3 of us. That's right, but, Okay, so before we get into all that kind of fun and games, this is a live call-in show. Ordinarily we're on at 4:30, but today's just an hour. Next week we'll be back at 4:30, though. Let's go over to David for today's news. What's happening in the world?
Got 2 or 3 news stories here.
Okay.
Let's go with one from Seeds of Life Are Everywhere, NASA researchers say. In 2 separate studies, scientists mimicked conditions of outer space, doused frozen interstellar cocktails with ultraviolet radiation, and created amino acids, which are critical components of life. The work shows that amino acids could be created around many developing stars, which emit high doses of UV radiation, and that life would have had just as good a chance of forming on planets that might exist around those stars as it did here on Earth. Remarkable as it might be to think of life's ingredients arriving on a space rock, researchers have sought to show that amino acids might also form in interstellar space and thus be ubiquitous. If so, the raw material of terrestrial life would date back to an earlier time before comets and asteroids were born. Amino acids are literally raining down out of the sky, said one of the team's leaders, Max Bernstein of the SETI Institute and NASA's Ames Research Center. If that's not a big deal, then I don't know what is. The findings may shed light on the origin of life itself, Bernstein said. We found that amino acids can be made in the dense interstellar clouds where planetary systems and stars are made. Our experiments suggest that amino acids should be everywhere, wherever there are stars and planets. So that's pretty interesting.
Sweet.
Be interested to see what comes out of all this.
Yeah, as I understand, a lot of these organic materials and these organic molecules are very very common among like very hot white young stars.
And then given the unlimited number of chemical reactions taking place in these areas, I mean, yeah, they said, these things could easily have been synthesized or just, formed from all this.
Yeah, and just yesterday, I found out that I read an article indicating that they think they've detected traces of chlorophyll in the Martian soil.
Oh, that's cool.
So that again, cool. That could indicate that.
That's pretty neat.
There could be life on Mars right now.
Yeah, a little microbial life. I mean, of course. It would really suck, wouldn't it, if like we landed a probe on a planet with life on it, but we landed on it. So,
or
sorry,
or like we brought some sort of Earth, bacteria with us that then destroyed that.
Well, they're careful about that.
Yeah.
Due to Carl Sagan, I think he had a big snit over that. Since we're on snits.
Yeah. So they just they 409 all their spacecraft before they shoot them off. Yeah. Right. So. Make sure to bleach it. And,
Can we get housekeeping to the shuttle, please?
Yeah.
All right.
It's Lysol the entire spacecraft before you send it into space. That's cool.
All right. Well,
We're not endorsing a brand here. Right?
No.
Let's move to Jerry Falwell, shall we?
Let's. Who doesn't like beating up on that guy?
Reverend Jerry Falwell, who takes his mission of bringing Jesus to the masses very seriously, is not amused by two internet parody sites depicting him as a liar and a jerk.
Well,
the sites jerryfalwell.com and jerryfalwell with 2 L's.com were launched by Illinois resident Gary Cohn, who was angered by the evangelist tirade blaming the September 11th attack on feminists, gays, and lesbians, among others.
Yeah. Now, Falwell's, just to interject real quick, Falwell's own website, I think, is simply Falwell.com, right?
Yeah, I believe it says it in here.
And this guy registered jerryfalwell.com, which Falwell should have had the brains to do in the first place.
Right, but he didn't.
Yeah.
Over the years, Falwell's outlandish comments have earned him a lot of enemies. The preacher has claimed, for example, the Antichrist was a Jewish man in his 30s, and that a character from the television show The Teletubbies was gay and damaging to the moral lives of children. But his comments a few days after the terrorist attack, blaming the event on judges who uphold church-state separation, abortion rights activists, gay people, civil liberties activists, and others who are trying to secularize America, were perhaps the most widely reviled. Well, this gentleman was so upset he registered the preacher's name to poke fun of Falwell and his beliefs. The site's homepage shows Falwell sticking his foot in his mouth repeatedly. In October, Falwell's lawyer sent Cohn a cease and desist letter charging him with trademark infringement and offering to pay him $1,000 for the domain names. Cohn zipped off a reply accusing Falwell's lawyer of cyberbullying and refused to capitulate. His reply, in part, said, "This is a completely non-commercial website which exists for the sole purpose of expressing, through a parody, my opinion that your client is a jerk." Now the matter rests in the hands of the World Intellectual Property Organization. Falwell's lawyer lodged a complaint on behalf of Falwell asking the Intellectual Property Organization to transfer the domain names to the evangelist. Basically to say, you can't own his name for your website. The complaint alleges the domain names infringe on Falwell's trademark, his name, that they were registered in bad faith, says here, no pun intended, and will lead visitors to false teachings about the Bible.
No, it won't.
Falwell
the site
has never
exists to ridicule
criticize,
Falwell. Jerry.
Everybody
That's the whole
knows it.
thing. That's what Jerry Falwell equates himself with, like everything Christian and biblical. So if you're attacking him, you're attacking the Bible.
Right.
That's how he spins
yes,
that. Yeah.
He is the Bible. Falwell has never registered his name with the U.S. Patent and Trademark Office, but his lawyer argued that it is a recognized common law trademark. Falwell in 1983 sued Hustler magazine when it published a cartoon satire in which the preacher bragged about having sex with his mother in an outhouse. A lower court awarded Falwell $200,000 for emotional distress, but the decision was overturned by the U.S. Supreme Court, which ruled that the cartoon was protected speech.
Yeah.
So.
Well, I want to sue him for emotional distress for telling me I'm going to be tortured forever.
Yeah. And, boy.
Fascinating.
Wow. Well, just,
You'd think he'd learn, but
they walk right into these things.
Apparently not.
And
fascinating story in the Philadelphia Inquirer. The liberation of Jews from slavery in Egypt is a freedom story that resonates beyond the Bible and was remembered at countless Seder tables Wednesday evening with the beginning of Passover. The renowned Jewish theologian Abraham Joshua Heschel calls the Exodus a moment so central to Judaism that the event defines the people for eternity. And yet, there's some interesting things going on here with the Exodus story. Archaeologists and other experts are finding no solid evidence outside Scripture that the Exodus and the slavery in Egypt ever really happened. One of the greatest stories ever told may be a fable.
One of the tallest stories ever told.
maybe a fable built on sand. That's so eloquent. Yeah.
The story of the Exodus did not happen the way the Bible depicts it, if it happened at all, said Rabbi David Wolpe, senior rabbi at Los Angeles' Sinai Temple. The rabbi kicked up a storm last year when he gave several sermons and classes at Passover focusing on research that cast doubt on the Exodus as a historical event. In doing so, he revealed information that many rabbis and scholars have known for years, but that had not been released to the general public. Of course, he immediately got a bad reaction. Oh, you're lying, you're wrong, As the rabbi pointed out, nearly 100 years of excavations have yielded no conclusive evidence that the Israelites were ever slaves, ever lived in Egypt, or wandered in the wilderness for 40 years. Nor is there proof that they conquered Canaan with Joshua as their leader. Many scholars now believe...
And a good thing, too, because that was a story of genocide where they're the bad guys.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. How many cities did they raise?
It's like 31 cities. They go through and kill every living thing, including little old ladies and babies and stuff
for
like
a
that.
good cause.
Right. That's
many
enemies of the Lord.
Good thing they were the good guys.
Yeah. Many scholars now believe that Israel arose indigenously out of Canaan, land that today is Lebanon. Under the prevailing theory, these Canaanites took on a new identity as Israelites and might have been joined or led by a band of Semites from Egypt, perhaps explaining the Exodus story. Archaeology and biblical history have demonstrated that the Bible is not intended to be taken as literal history, the rabbi said. It is
No,
a
it's only
spiritual
demonstrated
history.
that it shouldn't be.
Should not be taken
It
as
was
literal.
intended to be.
Yeah.
Yes, it was intended. But, the rabbi said it is a spiritual history, and that is the way modern Jews ought to relate to the biblical text. Kind of interesting. Rabbi Gerald Wolpe, David Wolpe's father and the Rabbi Emeritus of Har Zion Temple in Penn Valley, said that in Judaism, we have something called midrash, which means you are allowed interpretation. This fundamentalism that each word of the Bible must be accepted the way it is written is unwarranted. And then the last thing that is said was very interesting.
Well, among Jews, that's not uncommon at all.
Well, right. It's not nearly.
Yes, but then this, of course, crosses over into the Christian literalists, beliefs.
It's fundamentalism, Protestant fundamentalism.
The last thing in the story was very interesting. David Wolpe's, I guess, W-O-L-P-E, Wolpe. His wife, he says, of course, when he brought these up in his sermons and he got really, jumped on. He says, I remember what my wife said when the outcry first took off. She said, this is what happens when sunlight hits people's eyes, but they'll adjust.
There's gift of phrasing there.
Yes, what an
in
interesting
Judaism and Christianity, there are big conspiracies of silence by the people who know what's what to not tell the people in the pews. So, like, in a lot of the main Christian denominations, if you go to seminary, you find out the Bible is mostly not true. And then you probably don't preach that.
they
don't need to know
the
that.
California Christianity.
Right.
Yeah. Jesus is good.
And,
Love you. Buddy Jesus.
Traditionally, in Judaism, I think, there are particular passages that are, intended to be read in the temple, and particular passages that you never say this out loud.
Well, which ones with those?
That normal people wouldn't understand this, so you have to go through years of study before you're allowed to, talk with other people about it, maybe, but you never say that in the temple or in the synagogue.
Well, it's just interesting how many different scriptures and papyri that we have from back in those, from that date to close to that period, and first century, and so many of them are heretical to what's actually in the Bible. And basically, I mean, the Bible was just put together through this lengthy ecclesiastical editing process.
The councils.
Yeah, and I think Athanasius basically, was one of the guys who had the final say over what went in. Mm-hmm. And yet we have all of these documents, like the Nag Hammadi scriptures that were found that indicate that they portray an entirely different Jesus from the Jesus in the Synoptic Gospels. Right. Where he's more of like this, almost like a Stoic Greek philosopher, going around telling everyone, pretty much what Brian was telling everyone in The Life of Brian. It's like you have to rely upon yourself and your, which is not what, the Christians want people to hear. So it's interesting how much there is out there that there's no possible way that you can really determine what, if anything, really took place.
Right. About the Christian Bible, there's a really good book, Deconstructing Jesus, by a guy named Price. Mm-hmm. And it's not actually a deconstructionist book. He's like, being entirely mainline reasonable analysis here. And it talks about how this guy used to be in the Jesus Seminar.
Okay.
And then basically he quit the Jesus Seminar because he's saying, look, these guys know as much about the historical Jesus as anybody, and they don't know. Because there's basically no evidence the guy existed at all. And in fact, when you really study it, the way they study a lot of other myths, it looks just like William Tell. That basically, the further back you go, the less detail there is. Until it gets to like nothing. Nothing. At the time he lived, no information. And for a long time, people thought William Tell was a real guy and that he,
the arrow off his kid's head.
Yeah, and he, an important statesman, basically, ending up establishing something or the other. And turns out, no, William Tell never existed. And it was just a bunch of different myths about different people that got woven together and got out of control.
Yeah,
Jesus
and it
looks like he
just entered the body politic as this sort of, repeated, a story that just was taken at face value.
Right.
Like George Washington with the cherry tree and all the rest of that.
So Life of Brian may actually be fairly accurate.
So anyway.
Not that Brian represented Jesus. Just there wasn't one of those.
Ah, right. Well, he's not the Messiah. He's a very naughty boy. Okay, well, we're going to, before we get into opening up the phone lines for our callers, we're going to say a word or two about the Mormon Church and what goes on there and what Mormonism is all about, since they had this apparently lengthy thing.
The General Conference.
Cutting into our time slot. So, sort of here's our response to that.
Which, as most Mormons know, is like one of the most boring ordeals that you could have to endure. Because they never actually announce anything important. No important decisions are made there. It's just the public face.
Well, I was tuned into it before, I drove down here today, and it would just look like a big, service, pretty much. Just a big,
Now, I'm assuming that was the General Conference. I could be wrong. I don't know.
Well, it was something. But anyway. Well, it took our first half hour away, so that's why we're on the warpath today with the...
What it really needed was like a Jan Crouch with the big hair. Really liven things up.
What is it with the fundies and the big hair? It's like, this is like our, this is feels so much nicer, Okay, but I'm going to let Paul start, as you're our guest today. What sort of information? You have information?
Well, this is sort of impromptu. I don't have a lot prepared or anything. It's just that I spent a few months in the Holy Land a few months ago. And
Holy Land being Utah.
Yeah, right. Okay. Basically, I figured I wanted to go to a Holy Land, but I'm an atheist, so, one Holy Land's as good as another.
Sure.
And I could get to this one on my frequent flyer miles on Southwest. So,
there you are. All right, then.
And... it's a very interesting place. I thought I was white. Whoa. Mormons are kind of, it's kind of like the 50s. And the place is very much controlled by the Mormon Church. So, like, a little while before I was there, they sold a couple of blocks of downtown streets to the church so that the church could turn it into a plaza that was private so that they could not be obliged to let people have free speech there.
So it's a private public plaza.
Right. And so basically, there was all this hoo-ha about, well, no, it's just kind of a reasonable thing to do because of whatever. People cross the street a lot, between one Mormon thing and another. And, one of the few non-Mormon city council people stood up and said, look, if it was any other organization in the whole world, we would not sell hunks of downtown streets to them. And then he just sat down and said, okay, go ahead. But one of the things about Mormonism is they try and present the image of being normal Christians. And for me, that's just not a big plus anyway. But they're really not. So, most Christians are monotheists. They think there's one God, even if there's like a Trinity or something. Mormons are polytheists. They believe in lots and lots and lots of gods. And in fact, and they won't tell you this, right? This is not what they say for public consumption. They talk about there being one God. But what that means is there's one God of this universe. And he used to be a man in another universe. And he progressed through this developmental stages or whatever and became a god and got his own universe. And you can too.
Oh. Okay. Wow, so that's like an even...
And I'm thinking Ron Hubbard must have been looking at
something.
Scientology.
So it's like an even better deal than mainstream Christianity offers you, because mainstream Christianity offers you die and you get to like just live in heaven forever with God.
No, you get to be God. You get your own universe.
But under the Mormons, you get to be God and have your own universe.
Yeah.
So,
Pretty sweet.
Yeah, okay. But you only get this deal if you're a Mormon.
Right. And
a good one.
And a polygamist.
Ah, okay.
Now this is a very, very tricky thing because
being a polygamist is almost kind of already you're getting a taste of godhood, right? You've got your little got your little flock, right?
Or quite a big flock in some cases. Originally in the Book of Mormon it said one wife, right? That's the deal, and then somehow or another Joseph Smith ended up secretly marrying a bunch of women. And then he had this prophecy where turns out, no, it is okay to be polygamous, even though in an earlier prophecy it said it wasn't. And this didn't go over real well with his wife. But then he received another prophecy, and God told him to tell her that it was okay if he had other wives.
Wow. God, how easy life is when you've got the...
And just the pipeline to the truth here.
Now, now... So, have they worked out who the God of this universe was as a man in his previous life and where the universe...
I think his name was Jim.
Jim, okay.
I don't know.
So, we live in a big gym. We live in a big 24-hour diner. That's our universe.
Now, I could not be a polygamist. I'm fully controlled by my one wife. I don't see how...
So she could be a
five women.
Sounds like a nightmare, doesn't it?
Could break up the contrling of me.
Yeah.
I don't know.
No, actually, the polygamous life can be kind of rough.
Yeah.
And
most men consider one wife a handful enough.
Right.
But so your wife then could be the polygamist.
I guess so. I guess she has definitely enough control for lots of people. So
all right then.
Now back towards the end of the 19th century. Back toward.
Was this guy human in his previous life, and if so, which one?
Yes, and not only basically we're made in the image of God, and God has a body.
Right.
One thing is they don't believe in supernatural stuff in a certain sense. They think God is made out of stuff.
Okay.
It's just, some kind of physics. He's got a body. And when we're made in his image, he has a penis. God has a penis. This is cool. I wouldn't want to give that up to be a god.
Hence all the wars.
Right.
Hence all the wars, I think.
Wow.
Right. So now the thing about polygamy that's kind of confusing is, towards the end of the 19th century, they were trying to get Utah statehood. And this polygamy thing really did not go over well anywhere else on this continent, right? And so they weren't going to get into the Union if they kept the polygamy. And so they had some convenient prophecies and said, well, no more polygamy. We obey the laws of the land. We will be monogamous. Little fine print that says, in this life. But there's this thing about celestial marriage and spiritual advancement and stuff that you got to be polygamous in the afterlife, or you don't get to be a god of your own universe.
Okay, so wait a minute, you die, and then you live in the afterlife for a little while as a polygamist, and then so there's like this between stage after your mortal death and becoming God yourself, where you live in some state.
I'm not real clear on all the stuff that goes on in the afterlife, but they are very busy when they're dead.
Well, where do you meet women in the afterlife?
I'm not clear on this, but the afterlife is very interesting for Mormons, that they can convert people who are dead to Mormonism. And they do it all the time.
Wow.
And they have these ceremonies in the temple that if you're like a good Mormon and you can help. I have a friend who's done this, who's baptized dead people. And they go to the temple and they have this special ceremony. And she was like this stand-in person who stands in for some dead person that they're baptizing. And they baptize her. And she got like baptized 6 times in one day.
Boy, it's weird. Boy, let me just tell you, dig into this article really quickly so that we'll still have a little time to take some calls today. Just to give an idea of, this is a newsletter called Free Thought Today, published by Freedom from Religion Foundation. And there's a really interesting essay in here from a lady named Valerie Kent. This is the September issue of last year, where she talks about her experiences as a Mormon wife, called From Mormonism to Reality, and just gives a hint of what she had to kind of put up with as a young Mormon woman being married and how that all went. And here's just the gist of it. She talks about how she joined the Mormon Church at 18 after being exposed to teachings by friends a year earlier. Why did I join? She says, the church doctrine satisfied a deep need that I had to feel bad about myself. I grew up with the deep...
Having been raised Catholic, I saw a lot of similarities.
Yeah. I grew up with the deep conviction that I was truly a person who needed redemption. I had read a lot of the Bible, and if there was an all-powerful God out there, then I wanted to do whatever I needed to make sure that I didn't get whacked over the head the next time the hammer might fall. The more requirements the religion had, the more likely I could please the all-powerful God with the hammer. Another powerful attraction that the church had for me was the answers. I didn't have to make any decisions for myself. And more importantly, I didn't have to be responsible for any of the outcomes. It was all in God's hands. I didn't need to decide when or whom to date, or even an appropriate time to return from a date. When the time came, I didn't even need to choose a husband, only remain righteous enough for the right man to find me. As one of a group of college co-eds at BYU, Brigham Young University, I was counseled not to worry. For when the appropriate time came, God would give me a righteous man. Once given, I needn't worry, for as long as I followed my husband, he would take care of everything. I shudder that I was not offended by those words, only happily complacent that my future was taken care of. All I had to do was be obedient. And so she talks about this and how she gave birth to 4 children over the next 8 years and supported my husband as he lost job after job. I learned how to bake bread and grind wheat and make do on too little money, all the while praying and reading and trying to understand why God was punishing me by not making my life easier with all this obedience. As the years rolled on, I continued to apply the formula I had been given by the missionaries: prayer, scripture study, and following the words of the Mormon prophets. I became more and more depressed with the pressure of each addition to the family and each added responsibility. My returned missionary husband was not financially responsible, leaving much of the burden of how to pay the bills on my shoulders, she says.
Following Joseph Smith.
Yeah, he lied to me frequently, often hiding bills, and at one point even having a second post office box for bills to keep me unaware of our financial status. I was not allowed access to the checkbook and often went without needed food and clothing while my husband spent money whenever and wherever he wanted. I would turn when I would turn to my church leaders for help, I was told to pray harder, study more, and, quote, love him more. So like putting the onus of guilt on her shoulders for not loving him enough. But this is another thing that drives me crazy. It's like there's not only Mormons, but I've heard a lot of Christians say that, you know, if you're a believer, right, and stuff isn't going all that well for you, well, it's because you're just not praying hard enough.
Right.
You know, and the image is given of this God who's just kind of up there and just going, come on, what, you call that a prayer? Come on.
A little more, a little more.
Well, I like the image of the
Bring
hammer
it home,
falling,
Daddy,
God
with
up there
your
playing a game of theological whack-a-mole.
Yeah. It's a boink. So it's sick.
Obvious that, strict blind obedience only makes life easier for the person that's in charge receiving the obedience.
Exactly.
And the Mormon Church is way into obedience.
I tell you. But anyway, she says, I was constantly reminded of the New Testament scripture that God would not give us any burden we were unable to bear. Divorce was not an option for me. After all, we'd been married in the Mormon temple for, quote, time and all eternity. Then You have
They
interesting.
have something called a sealing ceremony, sealing, where they seal it eternally. So.
Wow. So anyway, but she goes on to talk about how she finally came to her senses and was like, "What in the world am I doing here?" And just finally took responsibility for her life and got a divorce and now she's talks about this sort of thing. So she talks about her little journey from this realm of weirdness back to reality and she also mentions a website which I found which is called xmormon.org. Which is sort of this, I guess, support group for people having escaped the Mormon Church.
By the way, if anybody's interested in a good book on Mormonism, I forget the author, but there's a book, Mormon America, that's excellent.
Didn't you? You've had that before.
Yeah, I left it in California.
Interesting. So, what else you have?
Maybe you should have left it in Utah.
Maybe. I don't know, just miscellaneous things about the Mormon Church. Let me see. Well, everybody knows, I guess, that they always have a prophet. The president of the church is a living prophet, which comes in very handy.
Convenient.
Right. So it's kind of like the Catholic Church in that they have their scriptures, but they also have, the people at the top who tell you what to think. And so it's also very convenient when they have a politically inconvenient piece of theology, you can get a prophecy that fixes it. And so, for example, up until I think it was 1976, black men could not be priests in the Mormon Church. And basically, I think the normal progression, a normal Mormon man becomes a priest, right? And they go to their priesthood meetings every week and stuff like that. But black men couldn't. They could be members of the church, but they couldn't be priests because they bear the curse of Ham. They are descended, according to Mormons of the old days, they are descended from Ham, who, I don't know if you remember Ham, but he was Noah's son who saw his father naked.
That's right.
And because of this, he was given the mark of Ham and cursed.
He saw his father naked after his father got drunk and passed out naked.
So his father, the drunkard, was passed out in the tent. He walks in and sees him naked, and so he gets this curse, right? Which means, there you are in 1972, you're a black Mormon, and they won't let you be a priest because this guy saw his dad naked.
And what was the reasoning? What was the reasoning for of only saying black men had to do with
because there was this racist ideology in the 19th century, which was when a lot of this started.
The curse from Ham was that your descendants will forever be like servants and bearers of wood or something like that.
And this was used to justify slavery and all kinds of racism.
A post hoc thing where...
So the fundamentalists said, that means his descendants
here are
black.
people taking this wacky book, the Bible, right, and trying to make sense of it, and you got this Eurocentric bunch of successful white folks who are conquering the world, and they say, we must be smarter, we must be right, we must be these guys in the Bible, and they must be those guys. That's why their lives
they're
suck.
doing all the manual
That's why
labor,
we're whooping their asses. That's why we're enslaving them.
So they must be the ones that the curse of Ham.
No, the Mormons weren't into slavery, though, so I don't want to imply that.
Okay.
But no, for a long time after slavery was abolished.
But that's how they sort of came up with this whole, because there's no indication in Scripture that Ham was a black guy or a black son.
But this is a traditional, stupid,
right?
It's not just a Mormon when it's like a fundamentalist type.
And basically, in the early 70s, with the success of the civil rights movement and stuff like that, and most people getting to be a lot more reasonable, it became a very embarrassing thing that the Mormons were theologically committed to black people being not okay. And so they had a very convenient prophecy. They were having the meeting of I forget what they call it, the prophet and his 10 or a dozen counselors or whatever, the highest bunch of Mormons. And the prophet just, felt the Spirit of God on him and said, turns out black people are all right. Okay? Who'd have thought?
Amazing how that works.
And then...
But, they're actually head of Bob Jones University. I think they didn't approve of black people until a little later on.
They don't. The Bob Jones University, they don't get their magic prophecies until suddenly some reporter is shoving a microphone in their face going, so what's this deal about interracial dating again? And what have you. So, all right, well, let's go ahead and take a caller. In our last, 25 minutes, we'll go ahead and take care of that. We have Kenny online. Whoa, a lot of volume there.
Whoa.
Oh, Kenny?
Yeah, sorry.
Okay, I think we've got the feedback.
Yeah, I think got it under control there.
All right, how you doing?
Doing good. I was just flipping channels, saw you guys up here. Just wanted to say hello and thanks for letting people know there's atheists out there. I'm one.
Well, thank you.
No, we appreciate it.
Sure. I'll be happy to contribute myself to the pot here.
Cool.
To the website and stuff.
All right.
All right, thanks.
Well,
All right,
thank you for
man.
calling.
You take care.
You too.
Well, that's
nice.
Yeah, we've gotten the show, both shows, our show and the radio show, have gotten a lot of nice feedback just from the public. We've gotten some nice emails and fan letters, so that's always nice to hear from folks. And I got a lot of very positive response from atheists to my reply to Cal Thomas's anti-atheist.
Should we talk about? Let's talk about Cal Thomas.
Yeah, let's do it real quick while we're getting the second call lined up. Cal Thomas published this editorial on April Fool's Day, which was basically an all-out, it's just an attack on atheists in general, just this blatant ad hominem attack. And the impression being given that I guess he thought he was writing a humorous piece, but it wasn't. It wasn't.
Like there weren't any jokes in it.
Yeah, it was just all insults.
Right.
So I wrote a reply to this in detail, basically pointing it out that, look, that this is pure bigotry is all he's engaging in. It would be one thing if he were, wanting to debate the issues. I'd be happy to do that. In fact, I challenged him to a debate if he wants to talk about the merits of believing in God or not believing in God.
Right.
And I posted this to the Christian website, crosswalk.com.
That the story originally appeared in, right?
Appeared in. Although, for all I know, it's a syndicated editorial, appeared other places. But and I've gotten a lot of really great favorable response from atheists saying thank you very much.
For those that haven't seen it, basically he wrote a story saying, "Gee, today's April Fool's Day, and that must be a national atheist holiday because they're all fools."
Yeah.
And to back that up, he appealed to popularity and he appealed to authority. Pretty much.
Right. He says, look, so many people believe this, the atheists must be wrong. And it's like, wait a minute, dude. First, most people are not Christians.
Yeah.
And second, most people thought the world was flat for a long time. Yeah. So,
and he brought up this whole thing about martyrdom, like, that makes a difference. Yeah. And I pointed out,
lots of people martyr themselves.
Yeah, sure. Hello, September 11th, they martyred themselves too. So does martyring yourself automatically make you right? Or does it? But anyway, I got a lot of very favorable feedback from a bunch of just atheists all around the country, very nice letters. But Cal Thomas wrote me back. 2 words. A 2-word response. He told me to lighten up.
And if you've ever read Cal Thomas, there's a little bit of irony there.
Yeah, I know.
He's a little heavy-handed and a little bit smug and serious about it.
But, if that's the best he can do, fine. he can reveal. So all the people that wrote me, with thanks, I forwarded Cal Thomas's letter to me to them so that they could spread. Because these are like guys who are in charge of atheists, like in Indiana and different various parts of the country, Louisiana, and I'm now getting responses of amazement. And they're like, "Is that the best he could do?" One guy wrote a brilliant response to me saying, "Oh yeah, lighten up." Like that's what Cal Thomas's response would be if somebody wrote an article about Christians, like the one he wrote about atheists, and then this guy went on to write a mock article about Christians in the tone, of what Cal said about atheists in his piece. So, but it's nice to get so much really nice, positive feedback from folks. So, okay, we're going to hit the calls.
20 minutes and 3 calls.
Yeah, we're going to hit the calls hot and heavy here. So, we'll take David on line 3 first. Hello, David.
Yeah, hi.
How you doing?
Oh, I'm doing pretty good. Basically, I was born in the Mormon church.
Okay.
Dragged kicking and screaming to church every Sunday till I left home to go off to college, never to return to church.
Funny how that happens, isn't it?
That's how pretty much say I'm from Georgia. I'd say about 60% of that's, I'm sure same with almost every large religion. As soon as you get away from home where you have an option, forget that. But a couple of...
Which is why you're supposed to go to Brigham Young.
Well, I never even made it to my mission. Basically, when I discovered the sex, drugs, and rock and roll, that's what
Oh, I hear they've discovered sex, drugs, and rock and roll in Provo, too. They don't admit to it.
I was in Provo when I was 14 years old, and it was the most horrid, boring place I'd ever been to.
Well, did you hear about the big porn case a little while back?
I didn't think they even...
Was it some city councilwoman was trying to make it illegal there or something?
Well, no, basically, they managed to have enough ordinances to harass this guy who had a regular old video store with a regular old little adult section in the back where they had softcore porn.
Like Playboy stuff.
Right, And so they hauled him up on obscenity charges. And, there's this 3-pronged test for obscenity.
Community standards.
And, right, so it's like no redeeming social value, appeals to prurient interest or whatever. And against the prevailing community standards. And so this guy was in deep trouble because this is Provo, Utah. This is the most Mormon place there is. This is where Brigham Young University is. And so obviously this guy was in deep, deep, deep trouble. Until his lawyer had this insight and went to this motel across the street from the courthouse and asked for their records of how often these different movies were requested. And it turns out that in this motel across the street from the courthouse in Provo, and basically nobody goes to Provo if they're not a Mormon. Why would you? Right. Well, actually, there's some people who do software there. But anyway, they had twice as much porn rental as most places. Most Marriotts don't do nearly as well on the porn.
Wow.
And then he got records from the satellite TV people. So it turns out not just people in motels, but people at home in Provo consume twice as much pornography as the national average. And so they got
backed him right up.
Well, community standards are the things that always blow porn cases out of the water.
And so they won the case.
I had a film professor when I was at U of H who was a guy who was often called as an expert witness in a lot of these obscenity cases back when he lived in California, was teaching out there. And he said the way that I would settle the whole community standards issue would be I would just go to a local bookstore and get the top 5 paperback bestsellers. And usually in that day and age, like the 70s, inevitably there'd be some Harold Robbins thing or something. And he said what I loved about Harold Robbins was he would always start on page 2. So I could just start reading at the beginning of the book, and he would get into the people having sex in chocolate vats and stuff like that. And he would just get up on the stand and start reading and then say, right, this is the number 2 paperback bestseller that you can buy in the gift shop of the building across the street. And so there you go. But anyway,
midstream of the money shop.
Yeah. But anyway, so what else about your experiences, David?
One comment about sort of a good thing about Mormonism. They don't believe in hell with the fire and the pitchforks and the burning and the pain and all that. Right. It's like basically a giant Holiday Inn. And how good you are.
You just don't get to go to the party.
Right, yeah. If you were a really good Mormon, that means you're up at the penthouse and you're partying. Now, if you were just Joe Blow heathen,
you're listening to the lounge singer downstairs doing the awful Barry Manilow.
You're eating that free continental breakfast.
And my understanding is you actually get a chance to change your mind after you're dead.
Pretty much in Mormonism, the only people that got real hell, which was in Mormon terms, it's just absolute darkness. It's like, Hitler and Stalin. You've got to be way, way out there. If just your regular Joe who held up a liquor store, well, you're just... You got room service, you might get a grilled cheese sandwich. Not all that bad.
Yeah, but have you ever just really not been invited to a party you really wanted to go to?
Yeah.
I mean, do you want to spend eternity feeling that way?
Compared to having a hot poker shoved up my butt on it.
Well, all right.
We don't need to talk about your personal life.
Well, there's lots of kinky parties out there where they're doing that, though, and some people enjoy that kind of thing. So
standards.
Wow. Well, we appreciate you sharing your experiences with us, David. Anything else?
That's it. Thanks a lot.
All right, man.
Great show.
Thanks for the call. And again, just a reminder to all of our unbelievers, new and otherwise, out there, visit our website, atheist-community.org. You can come to our bagel shop meetings and what have you. It's all kinds of fun. Let's talk to Mike on line 2 and see what he has to say. Hello, Mike.
Hey, guys.
Hey, how you doing?
I'm doing well, thanks. Watching the show, and you were spouting about Mormons, and I was just calling to actually correct you on one thing, real quick, and then share some information.
I'm no expert, so feel free to correct me.
I'm just I'm a student who actually recently did a paper on the Mormons.
Great.
Oh, okay.
For a project, but I think they didn't reverse the anti-black doctrine until 78.
Okay.
The story behind that is supposedly, this is from the book The Godmakers by Ed Decker.
Yes, I know that.
I'm sure you're familiar with it. If not, definitely get a copy. Okay. But they said that in the pre-carnation, before we all become mortal as we are now, we are born.
Before we're a gleam in our Father's eye.
We're born in the spirit world with God, our Father, but then the blacks are the ones who join the rebellion with Satan against God.
Wow.
Which is why they are. Whoa. Now most people won't tell you this, but that's why they are black in this world. Is because they were.
Because their souls are black because they were in league with the devil.
Yes, their skin is black because they joined with Satan in the rebellion against God.
Wow.
So they were part of that. They were part of that 1/3 of all heaven that.
Now, does the Mormon Church still kind of like secretly hold to this idea, or have they repudiated it utterly?
They hold to it, but they won't tell you that.
Yeah.
But it's in the book.
God made.
And so get Doctrine and Covenants. That's where the official Mormon theology is, and it's got some real weird stuff in it.
That is
definitely a good one from Doctrine and Covenants too.
Yeah. Okay, that's that's creepy information. What else did your research discover when you were doing your paper?
Well, there's a lot of stuff that didn't go into the paper just because it's a paper for school, and I was actually kind of scared when I was writing the paper that they're going to try and poison me or something.
Well, they do have an office. There's a person who is responsible and has people working for him, I assume, for basically, and this was dictated by a prophecy, that you should basically keep clippings of everyone who speaks about the Mormon Church.
Okay.
And they have a big library of stuff. You write something about the Mormons, they know.
Okay, so they're taping this show right now.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, they're taping it.
Oh yeah.
Good. Hi.
I'm sure a bunch of them just left their recorders going from the other thing.
Yeah, might have. Yeah, they'd be like, "What's this?" You're taping over their porn. Hey, we really appreciate hearing from you. Thanks so much, and we're going to go ahead and get to the rest of our callers in the last 10 minutes. But thanks a lot for the information.
Yeah.
Sure.
Call us again sometime.
But besides porn, there's other vices in Utah too. Now, one thing I actually like is they have 3-2 beer there. They have microbrew 3-2 beer, which I actually enjoy because it does taste good and I can drink more of it. So there's one thing I really like about the Mormon influence. But to drink alcohol in general, you have to be a member of a private club.
So every place.
So you buy these, memberships for a year. Yeah.
So that's like here in Texas, or like in certain parts of the country where you have wet counties and dry counties.
Right.
My parents' hometown, up in Jefferson, Texas, they have bars there, but you have to buy a membership at the bar before they can sell you.
And basically, good Mormons are not supposed to go into these places where you can drink and smoke, which is one of the reasons why non-Mormons really like those places. Because there's no Mormons there.
All right.
But wait, one more thing. Mormon women have the highest rate of smoking in the country. I mean, women in Utah have the highest rate of smoking in the country.
Okay.
Largely because the non-Mormon women smoke to send a signal to men, I am not a Mormon. If you are a Mormon, I don't want you to hit on me.
Excellent.
So that's a rough extreme to have to go
Yeah,
through.
it is.
Mormonism
Do you think they could just get a...
Yes, absolutely.
All right, Mormonism
Yeah.
causes cancer.
Okay, we have Catherine on line 3. Let's go ahead and take that. Wait a second. Catherine?
Yeah.
Hi, how are you doing?
I'm doing fine. How are you doing?
Just fine.
Okay, I'm one of those Mormons who watched conference and then just kind of rolled into your show.
Uh-oh. Glad to have you.
Fascinated. There's plenty of Mormons who don't like Utah Mormons. I mean, there are a lot of us who are from different states. Like, I can't even imagine living in Utah, but it doesn't mean I don't like the church.
Okay.
So, I mean, it's different. It's different in different parts.
You think the Utah Mormons are kind of uppity? Is that the...
I think their world is very, very small. And I feel sorry for people who move to Utah because I don't think they're welcoming. It's not that they don't mean to be, but it's like once they've decided that you're not interested in their faith, they don't have as much use.
It's not the friendliest place in the world.
No,
There's definitely some exceptions. There were some very nice Mormons who were very nice to me when I was there, but there's also a fair amount of coldness.
I don't think it's that they're not nice people. It's just their world is very small, and
they don't know what to make of you.
Yeah.
Well, anytime you have some sort of belief system where it says, anyone who's not a part is kind of a bad person, that's very regrettable. I mean, it creates these attitudes that, they're just, it creates this sort of mistrust and animosity. And that's a shame, I mean, I've had very nice conversations with some Mormons myself. I had a couple of the guys on the bikes, come by my apartment complex, and not to talk to me. There was actually a Mormon family who lived there, but we ended up in a conversation just because I was out walking my dog at the time. And they were really, really nice guys. I got a copy of the Book of Mormon from them and everything. So, but they were really fascinated to hear about...
Get Doctrine and Covenants. That's where the good stuff is.
Okay. But they were really, I told them all about who I was and what I did in this program, and they were really interested. And so...
so we'll have our guys start recording that immediately.
Yeah, so... so interesting. Yes. Well, it's nice to know that, not everybody is quite as, caught up in the heavy fundamentalism of it all.
It's a different world. It really is. My parents lived in Logan for a while, and it was hard to visit. Besides the fact that it was cold, it was just...
But there are in the Salt Lake area a fair number of liberal Mormons.
I think that the church is
Kirby, who writes for the Salt Lake, what is it? The
paper there.
Yeah,
the newspaper there. He has a humor column where he just talks about this kind of stuff and classifies the different kinds of Mormons. I've actually got a couple of books of his stuff, and he's actually pretty funny.
Well, the Mormons' view is the last days before Christ comes, that Salt Lake will be much more non-Mormon than it will be Mormon. All of Utah will be, but Salt Lake especially, and it already is. I think it's a greater percentage non-Mormon than it is Mormon at this point.
Well, I recall something that happened about a year or two ago, where there was a bit of a flap about a bunch of Mormons had essentially this may have been a particular little group, but they had taken their children out of school in preparation for the end of the world.
Oh, yeah.
They were like, this is happening any minute now.
Right.
And so we're preparing for this. And,
but there are a lot of polygamists in Mexico who just decided they didn't think the law had ever been changed, and they keep wanting to.
And there's a fair number still in Utah.
Utah too.
And there was the big Tom Green trial recently.
No, it's in Utah too, but it's. The people who pulled their kids out of school.
And there's thousands of them in a town in Arizona.
They just thought it up on their own. They just took it. They read it, and God told them they had. They had their own miracle.
All right. Wow. Well, we appreciate your input.
All right. Y'all have a good day.
Yes. You take care. Bye-bye.
So in general, Mormons are what we would normally call fundamentalists, but there are these splinter groups called Mormon fundamentalists,
right?
Who they don't go with some of these recent prophecies about polygamy and stuff. They think the church has gone astray, which if you read the old scriptures, they obviously have. So it's a reasonable point of view,
right?
And so they're still doing the polygamy thing. And one of the sad things about that is, to a large degree, they're welfare cheats. They figure it's more important that they reproduce like crazy than that they pay for it.
Yeah. Boy. Well, that's when it gets ugly.
Robert, been waiting?
Yeah, Robert's here on line 1. Hello, Robert.
Hey, guys.
Hi, appreciate you waiting.
Thank you. Hey, what's the full name of the Reverend Charlie Darwin's book, The Origin of Species?
Hello?
Did we lose you?
We might have. Oh, well. Anyway, I guess we lost him. Anyway,
On the Origin of Species?
On the Origin of Species. And he wasn't...
No,
was there a subtitle?
There's a subtitle.
Yeah, on the Origin.
Well,
we'll get that in. It's on the Origin of Species, and then there is like most books in the 1800s had really lengthy titles with big, long, extended subtitles.
I suspect he was going to grind some axe about that, but we lost him.
Oh well. Anyway, but the point, Charles Darwin never became a reverend. He was in training for the seminary.
Right.
But then pursued a career as a naturalist.
Well, let's go ahead and get Blair on line 2, and then we don't have time for any more
Hello, Blair?
callers.
Hello.
Hi. How you doing?
Pretty good. How you guys doing?
Hi. Well, just fine. Having a fun day. What can we do for you?
This, I'm going to try this. It's a pretty bad gap or bad bridge, but I'm going to try to make a bridge from Mormonism to animal rights.
Okay.
And Mormonism, often like other Christian and other religious traditions, aren't willing to extend rights to animals. And one of the commendable aspects of atheism is that atheism is more likely to extend the rights to animals. And I know you guys can't speak for the whole community in general, but how do you compare or feel
just about animal rights in general?
Right, animal rights in general, and how atheism is more supportive of it, whereas religious traditions that preach compassion are unwilling to extend it to animals.
Well, it's interesting. A lot of religions that preach compassion, of course, don't practice it. I mean,
right,
you
exactly.
see that going on just with Northern Ireland and Middle East.
Right, they preach compassion in general, but then they rule it out in some important cases. Like we're here to have dominion over the earth.
Right, exactly. Whereas, but most religious traditions will admit that they want to extend compassion to humans. Mm-hmm. But then are adamantly opposed to the idea of extending it to animals, and that just...
Well, I don't know that Christianity really, or at least the Bible makes a firm statement one way or the other about animal rights. I mean, sure, on the one hand you had like Noah saving the animals 2 by 2, but then on the other hand,
but that's so we could eat them.
Yeah, but then you had Jesus driving the man's demons into a flock of 200 sheep, which all then pigs. That's right, pig sheep. Who all jumped over a cliff then and could drown themselves. And that doesn't seem like something that an animal lover would do.
Right. And there actually are humanitarian, sort of humane dictates in the Old Testament about how to treat animals. That were reasonably civilized for the time, but they were obviously not civilized for our time.
Very nice at all.
Right.
He didn't do that.
Yeah,
I'm sorry.
no.
Well, it wavers back and forth because Noah's ultimate goal is to save all the animals, but then a couple chapters later, God gives them dominion to eat the animals. So.
Yeah. But then, of course, I don't think Jesus wasn't exactly a big pro-vegetarian guy either. I mean, when the fig tree didn't bear fruit for him, he cursed it and killed it.
Exactly.
That doesn't sound like something a vegetarian would. So I love animals, right?
Right.
I'm a carnivore still, but I believe in humane treatment in general for animals. But I don't know that it's necessarily, atheism really only refers to the fact that you don't believe in a God. So beyond that, whatever other philosophy of life you want to hold, I don't know that a person being an animal rights supporter, which I like to consider myself that I am, although I'm not as extreme as like some of the folks in PETA or some of the other groups. I don't think, to me, that's not really so much a thing that has to do with, necessarily has to have anything to do with atheism, although I will say that, I had a recent incident where I did something that most people would find extremely bizarre, where I was walking my dog in my apartment parking lot and found a wounded bird that had either been hit by a car or something, and scooped him up in a box and tried to drive him to the animal emergency 24-hour hospital. And he died in transit. Some folks were like, gee, Martin, that was kind of, nice, but kind of a bit much. And they were sort of asking me to explain myself, and I said, look, folks, we all come from the same genetic soup,
Right.
I mean,
Have some empathy here.
Yeah, I mean, this bird and I are, we're distantly, and life is life.
Well, I have 13 cats, 2 dogs, and 5 aquariums, so we probably know where I stand.
Yeah, and yes. I think life is good, and we should be all for it. And thanks for your call. And we're out of time today, so thanks very much.
Thank you for calling.
And see us next week, 4:30. Again, as usual, thanks to Paul for being on the show. Thanks to our stalwart crew. Welcome back, Wendy Britton, to Austin, our long lost member there. And see you next time, Christians. We don't hate you. We just think you're wrong. Bye.
Production.
Bye. And here's our love going.
We won't be preempted next week.
Wait, timing.